warehouses associated with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Command, but we've bombed those warehouses before in I guess Abu Kamal across the river from Al-Qaim. We've been hitting that place, the same place over and over again. It's like the Iranians go, okay, rebuild the warehouse so America can bomb it next week, kind of thing. We're not doing real harm on the Iranians because we don't want to. If we do real harm on the Iranians, then they get involved. And now we're talking about an expansive conflict, and we only got 2,000 guys in that region. That ain't a lot of guys. And if the whole region blows up, those 2,000 guys can be swamped. They can be overrun. And now we have to divert all our air power into that area. Again, who's going to pay for it? We don't have a budget for this. And now we're doing that. And this war gets out of control, spins out of control. This is a nightmare scenario for the Biden administration. And if it blows up enough, because another area that everybody's worried about is what's going to happen with Hezbollah. Hezbollah has done a masterful job of escalation management. They have been, I mean, it's like the Israelis, you know, are sitting there in this boxing match with Hamas, and Hamas split the eye, and Israel's bleeding here, and Hezbollah is just sitting there once in a while going, "Let me rub some salt in that wound for you." And he's, come on, get out of here, you know, boom, boom, pow. And they get salt in that wound. Stop it. You know, Hezbollah is just sitting there pissing them off because they're really, really putting, and it's hurting them. Remember how sophisticated I said the Houthi were? Understand that most of what Hezbollah is doing against Israel is economic in nature. Yes, they're taking down Israeli troops. They're destroying a lot of Israeli tanks, a lot of Israeli infrastructure. But what they're really doing is terrorizing the north so much that 70,000 Israelis had to be withdrawn from the northern settlements and resettled in temporary accommodations. That ain't free. That ain't free. It's costing Israel billions of dollars. And that 70,000 who, you know, they had jobs up there, which means they're working, they're producing, there's taxes, the economy kind of stuff. They're here now. They ain't working. They ain't producing. They're just sucking up resources. It's a huge, huge, giant, you know, gutting of the Israeli economy. The same thing out of what Hamas is doing in the settlements in Negev. People had to, tens of thousands had to be relocated. Man, this is a giant hole in the Israeli economy, and it's unsustainable. On top of that, 300,000 reservists. You know what a reservist is? It's a working man. It's a guy who has a job. He has a family. He is participating in the Israeli economic experience. And now he's not. Now he's in the reserves where he's getting a paycheck because they have to pay him, but he's not producing anything. That job is gapped. Whatever he was doing in the Israeli economy ain't happening right now. And billions of dollars. So what Hezbollah is doing, what the Houthi are doing, the economic impact on this is destroying the Israeli economy, destroying it. And this is unsustainable for Israel. So this alone is prompting the Israelis to say, you know, we have to resolve this fight. You got people like Gallant. I think he's the Minister of Defense right now. What a character, you know, with his genocidal talk. But he's talking about we're going to take it to them. Gallant knows, though, and so does the Israeli Defense Force, that if Israel were to open up a second front against Hezbollah, that Hezbollah will take Galilee, that northern Israel will fall. Because Hezbollah's got 80,000 guys. Many of them, most of them perhaps, are combat hardened. That means they've been fighting in that, you know, the Syrian conflict. These guys know war. They're very well trained, very well equipped, very well motivated, and they have a plan. If you think the Hamas plan that was executed on October 7th was innovative, you haven't seen anything yet. Hezbollah has a plan to take northern Israel, and they will take northern Israel, and there's nothing Israel can do to stop it, which is a nightmare. So nobody wants escalation. So in a way, because we can't afford to escalate, the United States can't afford to escalate, Israel can't afford to escalate, you make it even, you give the people who are putting the pressure on you even more latitude because they know you don't want to escalate. So they're going to push the envelope even more and create more and more pressure. And that's what's happening right now. This is the untold aspect of this war, but it's this aspect that's probably going to promote, you know, the collapse of Israel more so than just Hamas defeating Israel in Gaza.
Yeah, and maybe lastly on this, do you feel like the confluence of these these various aspects of Israel's brutal onslaught and what it's produced, both in its troubles with fighting Hamas on its own terrain, and the fact that that there is an axis of resistance that has been managing a conflict escalator that is prepared to move up. Do you feel like, given that Biden has given this deadline, that Israel will actually follow it? Because Israel's capacity for rational military and political behavior, especially since the aftermath of October 7th, appears to have diminished nearly to non-existence. I'm curious on your thoughts about that.
I mean, it's a tough political question here in America because of the control that the Israeli lobby has over everything. Congress, the presidency, the media, the spin. So it's an uphill struggle to get America to, change its policy regarding Israel. In the past, it was Israel can do no wrong. We support Israel no matter what. But we're now paying a price for that. And so I do believe you're going to see pressure being put on Israel. I think Netanyahu is finished. I think he's going to go. I think Biden is going to make it clear that continued American support of Israel is contingent upon a change in the Netanyahu government. We pretend that it doesn't mean Netanyahu is going to go, but if you dissolve this right-wing coalition, then Netanyahu can't continue as prime minister because it's consensus-driven. He has to get a ruling coalition. He won't be able to. Somebody else will step in and take over, and that's what we want. But here's the danger of all this, Danny. Here's the problem. And we got to be honest about this, because right now we're being lulled into a false sense of complacency. Hamas is kicking ass. There's no doubt about it. Hamas will not be defeated. But who likes Hamas? Does Egypt like Hamas? Nope. Does Jordan like Hamas? No. Does Syria like Hamas? Not really. They were just at war with them a couple of years ago. They tolerate Hamas. Turkey? Yeah, Turkey likes Hamas, but not that much. Not enough to go to war for them. And the further we get away, you realize that Hamas is very unpopular. And if we just erase the term Hamas and insert the term Palestinian, let's be honest, nobody cares about the Palestinians. There's a whole bunch of demonstrations taking place right now, but these are cause-effect demonstrations, meaning that if it weren't for the slaughter of the Gazans, these demonstrations wouldn't be happening. These people aren't going to go into the streets and demonstrate on behalf of a two-state solution or a one-state solution or a free Palestine. They're demonstrating because the bombing's happening. So what happens when the bombs stop falling, when the genocide stops? Are these people going to continue to be out there putting the pressure on the United States? Is the United States going to continue to feel isolated, or is it going to go back to what it was, where people say, wait a minute, so they've stopped, we don't have to turn on TV and look at dead Palestinian babies anymore? Oh, thank God. So let's get back to what we were doing, which is chugging along with normal economic activity where the Palestinians are problematic. We don't want to do it. And so the danger here is that all the sacrifice that the Palestinians have made, and believe me, they are making the suffering they're doing through, and you see there's a growing recognition amongst them that they have to do this. This is their burden to pay to get statehood, that all of that will be for naught, because there will be a desire to, we don't want to embarrass Israel. We don't want to humiliate Israel. We're going to look for a compromise solution where we have a moderate Israeli government who will return to giving lip service to, reviving Oslo, but never really being serious about reviving Oslo. And gradually the Palestinians will be forgot again. I'm afraid that's the direction that we're heading. And so, it's imperative that the international community find a way to sustain this pressure, because change will happen because the United States feels the pressure. I mean, when we start turning on Israel, the pressure is working. All right. But the problem is, let's say we get Israel to change, the fighting stops in Gaza. Now the United Nations comes in with their, because the UN doesn't like the Palestinians either. I mean, nobody likes the Palestinians. They've been getting screwed by everybody forever. And so you start turning it over to these old institutions, and it's forgotten. The only one out there articulating right now for the Palestinians seriously is Iran. And here's where the hope is. Because Iran has good relations with two nations who are the nemesis of the United States in the geopolitical arena, Russia and China. And Russia and China have historically kept sort of a hands-off approach to the Palestinian issue. But I think Russia and China, I think they do care about the Palestinians. There's a genuine concern. You see, Putin articulating things that no Western leader has ever articulated about what Israel is doing, criticizing Israel. And China's talking about getting engaged. And it's in China's interest to take advantage of what's going on to expand. Because what is Gaza going to need? Infrastructure development. Who's pretty good at that? China. So it's an opportunity for China. It also, if you keep pushing the necessity of a Palestinian state to resolve this Arab-Israeli conflict, you keep putting pressure on the United States too. What the United States wants to do is quickly get back to, even though Biden says that we won't be returning to October 6th, I guarantee you all the U.S. wants to do is get back to October 6th. That's all we want to do. We're not looking forward to any of this innovative political stuff in the Middle East. It scares us. Russia and China, on the other hand, are looking forward to something like that. So I'm not giving up hope for the Palestinians, but I am saying that all this stuff that we're seeing, all this pressure, these votes at the UN, that can disappear that quick. And you know it. You know it can, because we're not talking about, a deep foundation of love for the Palestinians out there in the world. We don't like seeing dead Palestinian kids. So people are rallying to the cause of Palestine. But when the kids stop dying, will that support for Palestine still be there? And that's the big question.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a big question, and I share your sentiment about where the hope is, because yes, Iran is indeed a very serious actor when it comes to supporting Palestine, and I think you're exactly right. Both Russia and China, when it comes to this region, see the Palestine question as both one of course, standing for international law. That's what Russia and China like to do. They like to promote it because it's within their interests. Most stable, rational countries who are thinking about both their own development and what's good for the world in terms of their own development. It's stability. It's peace. It's not having this massive conflict, which could lead, that's genocidal in nature, that could lead to a very hot war between most countries in the region. That is an ultimate disaster for Russia and China. So, of course, this Palestine question is so important to not just stabilize, but also, Russia and China are the only countries outside of the region, for the most part, outside of some outliers that don't have the same kind of influence. But the biggest countries that do support a Palestinian state and legitimately do, not giving lip service like Blinken does when, he says we're for this two-state solution, and then, green lights the absolute eradication of it that Israel is pursuing. Both Russia and China actually do support this.
Yeah, and look, we are living in an age of geopolitical transformation. I mean, it sounds very academic. It sounds like geopolitics 201, your junior level course in college for that international relations degree. But it's real and it's happening, and it's in many ways it's exciting, but in many ways it's scary, because we collectively, the world, have for so long grown accustomed to American hegemony. We can talk about how we're opposed to it, and everybody's like, we're against American imperialism, we're against hegemony, we're against the rules-based international order. Of course you are, except you're not, because you are for stability. And while there is a whole bunch of instability in the world out there, there's a whole bunch of stability that's brought about by this, and people are lulled into a false sense of complacency by the perception of stability. And right now, this transformation that's taking place from the American singularity to this global multipolarity, BRICS and all that stuff, it scares people because it means you have to put your faith and your trust in something else. Now, if you're somebody who has been disrupted by the American singularity, yeah, you're ready to jump ship. But if you're somebody whose life has been chugging along in relative comfort, it's a scary proposition, a frightening proposition. So it's not, automatic logic where people say, well, America's failed, so we're going to jump on the Chinese and the Russian ship. Well, for many places in the world, America hasn't failed. We didn't get to be number one because we're a bunch of losers. Okay, we did some things right, and we bullied our way to the top, whatever you want to say. But America is a very powerful nation that has a lot of successes attached to it. And a lot of people around the world found those successes attractive. Especially the political and economic elites who make money off the American singularity. And so this idea that we're just going to seamlessly transfer power over to the Russians and the Chinese, that ain't going to happen. This is a very scary time. And it would be scary if this transformation was taking place in a conflict-free environment. But now we start throwing in the not only the reality of war, but, what's that biblical statement? Rumors of war. There will be rumors of war. There will be wars and rumors of war. So, we have real war, but we have rumors of war too, potential of conflict that is generated by the friction that comes from this transformation. It scares the crap out of me. And I think it scares the crap out of just about anybody who's out there because, is the United States willing to go gently into that good night? Dylan from Dylan Thomas here. Or are we going to rage against the dying of the light? And my fear is that we're going to rage, and we're going to lash out, and we're going to create problems. We're going to make as much friction as possible rather than doing the smart thing, which is to smoothly transition and take an important seat at the table of multipolarity. We're going to resist that for as long as possible. And the consequences aren't just going to be economic and political disruption, but it can be, chaos and conflict as well. So as much as it makes sense for Russia and China to step into this Palestinian, crisis and be the leaders to get us out, it's just not that easy. America's not going to give up the role that it's enjoyed for the last, 40, 50 years as the lead influencer in the Middle East region. We're not going to, hand that mantle over to Russia and China willingly. So there's a lot of disruptive capacity out there, a lot of mischief for America to cause, going forward.
Yes, indeed, and perhaps we can close the program on this. You wrote a couple of articles in the last couple of weeks. One of them was for Energy Intelligence. You wrote about, is the U.S. still an essential nation? And you also wrote for RT recently an article about the U.S. military's multi-trillion-dollar fraud. And there were a lot of interlocking, very interconnected points about everything that you just stated. And so I wanted to ask you to close here, with regard to these developments. You are also trying to build a campaign, waging peace. You're trying to develop a film. I'll pull all of this stuff up as you're talking. Given that the United States is spending so much on its military, and all of its maneuvers and its leadership are committed to these maneuvers, point to a pretty disastrous conflict that you say with Russia, with China, and you also have this unresolved and with what's gone on with Israel's onslaught in Gaza, obviously still a very relevant point, the Middle East or West Asia, that is still very much a possibility of potential hot conflict. Given all of this, I mean, one, how do you feel like your film Waging Peace will contribute to helping the United States become a more rational actor on the world stage? And two, where do you see this going? Do you see, because on the one hand we have the United States' belligerence is so clear for all of us, but on the other hand there are some pretty stark barriers. A lot of money being spent, not a lot of wars being won, and that could very well lead to massive changes in its own right. So I'll kick it to you while I pull up your materials.
Well, I'm old school American, I guess I will say, is that I have faith in the system. I know if I glance over to the comments, I'm probably going to be eviscerated for saying that. How could you have faith in the system? How could you? Look, if I don't have faith in the system, if I don't believe in the potential of this country, then what the hell do I believe in? I mean, America doesn't exist. It's not, it's not a viable entity. And I'm not willing to go down that route. So I hold out hope that the American people will be able to be awakened by all that's happening around him. I wrote this article in RT, and one of the things I talk in there is about the fact that the United States has grown so accustomed to throwing money at the Department of Defense because we just assume that if we funded it, then America will be able to win every war in the world. And what the American people are finding out is that not only could we not defeat the Taliban, not only could we not defeat Al-Qaeda, we can't beat Russia, China, we can't beat anybody. We can't beat Iran. We don't have the ability to do this. And yet we're spending all this money. And so I think there's a growing sense of betrayal. And the idea of, America being the essential nation, we can't be the essential nation when we don't allow ourselves to be essential. I mean, essential means useful. America is essential because you can't solve a problem without America there. But when America becomes the problem, we're not essential. We're the opposite of essential. We're disposable, and that's the world is finding out, especially because America's been operating with this our way or the highway concept. We sanction you if you don't agree with us. We go to war with you, but we can't go to war with you anymore because we can't win any wars because we don't have a military capable of winning wars. Sanctions don't work. And what the world's finding out is, hey, the world can function pretty good without America. In fact, the world probably functions better without America. And so America's got to change the way it's going. If we wait for the government to make this decision, we're screwed. The change has to come from below, from the American people. The American people have to become empowered with knowledge and information so that they can hold the people they elect to higher office accountable for what they do in our collective names, maybe elect better people who to represent us. And so ultimately it comes down to conditioning the minds of the American people. The main facility is in Syria proper, and it's where the United States, together with some of their NATO or European allies, I think right now there might be a Norwegian presence there. They provide a training and assist mission to forces that we claim that what we're doing there is anti-ISIS, that we're taking on the Islamic State. But actually what we're doing is aligning ourselves with tribes in the region that used to be affiliated with the Islamic State. And we're using these forces as part of our effort to destabilize the regime of President Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria. We're there illegally. The Syrian government hasn't invited us into Syria as they have, for instance, the Russians or the Iranians. We're there illegally. We don't even have a legal authorization from the United States Congress to be there. We're just sort of there in this mission. And we have several hundred American troops there. The vast majority of them are at this base in El Tamf. Right across the border, there's a number of facilities. There's a UN school that's out of business, but we've taken it over. We use it for logistics. And there's a place called Tower 22, where, again, we have some logistics things. We are claiming that the drone struck Tower 22, which would mean that it struck inside Jordanian territory. The Jordanian government saying, no, drone didn't strike inside Jordanian territory. It struck inside Syrian territory, where the vast majority of these American troops are. The fact that we continue to overemphasize that this was in Jordan just underscores how much we're lying and how much we don't want to admit that we have an illegal presence inside Syria. That is impossible to just. So let's just start right off that the drone that struck this base struck American soldiers who are illegally on the ground in Syria, carrying out a mission that has nothing to do with, countering ISIS and everything to do with, this decades-long fantasy we have that somehow we can undermine and destabilize the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. The base was struck as part of an ongoing effort by pro-Iranian militias, both in Syria and in Iraq, to punish the United States for its continued support of Israel and the ongoing genocide that Israel is perpetrating against the Palestinian people. And this is important because this strike didn't just happen out of the blue. There's been scores of attacks of this nature that have been unfolding for weeks, and American troops have been wounded in these attacks. And why do I bring that up? Because the United States right now is struggling, saying, okay, what are we going to do? Why hadn't we already planned that out? I mean, we have American troops on the ground in a region that are being attacked. The key thing about deterrence is that if you want to deter somebody from doing something, you don't develop your deterrence strategy after they've done that which you're trying to deter. If you don't want them to attack you, if you don't want them to create a situation where they kill 3 American service members, wound 34 others, I think the number's up to 40 now, then they have to know what the price is that they will pay for doing this. But what we've been doing is, they strike us, then we strike them, a little target here. They strike us, we strike them. We're not deterring, we're reactive in nature. And so now we have a situation where we're trying to develop a deterrent strategy, a deterrent, an operation of deterrence after the fact. We haven't deterred anything. They hit us. They killed 3 Americans. They wounded 40 others. Now, we shouldn't have been there. The tragedy here is that these soldiers, I think they're reservists from Georgia involved in engineering, they should not have been there. It's a tragedy that they died, but what the heck did we expect was going to happen? And we knew that they were attacking us. We knew that there was this potential. So now what are we doing? We're trying to come up with a deterrent to prevent future attacks by doing what? By expanding the conflict so that Iran is dragged into this. This is stupid beyond belief. The Iranians will not be deterred from anything. The Iranians have said we had nothing. They had nothing to do with this attack. Well, maybe they didn't order the attack, but I think that the drone that was used to strike the base was an Iranian-made drone that was provided to these forces. Wait a minute, America. Are you trying to tell me that if a nation provides weapons to a third party and that third party attacks you, that they're a party to the conflict? Wow, what's that say about what we're doing in Ukraine? But that's a whole different story altogether. The point is, we're going to do what? Strike Iran. What did the Iranian Navy have to do with this strike at Al-Tanf? Not a damn thing. So if we hit an Iranian naval target, we're expanding the war. And the Iranians will say, you've attacked us, and now we'll have a general war. And if you think what happened in Al-Tanf was bad, wait till the Iranians start dragging. Remember when they hit the al-Assad base with their ballistic missiles, the precise nature of those attacks. If the Iranians unleash their precision-guided missiles on American facilities in the region, we won't have 3 dead. We won't have 30 dead. We won't have 300 dead. We could have 3,000 dead. For what? For what? Because we want to look tough? This is the trap that the Biden administration has created for itself. We're not going to win. We're not deterring anything. All we're doing is escalating the conflict. And the only person that's happy right now is Benjamin Netanyahu, because this is what he has wanted from day one, since he first testified to the United States Congress back in the 1990s, when he said that the United States needs to strike Iran. Well, guess what? Benjamin Netanyahu is getting his wish. If we do what the news reports claim that we're getting ready to do, there will be a general war between the United States and Iran, a war that we're not prepared to fight, we're not equipped to fight, and a war that we will definitely lose.
Yeah, talk more about this losing to Iran aspect, because it feels like since October 7th, 8th, 9th, especially after Israel's assault in Gaza, everything the United States has done up until this point has been to escalate this regional situation. And it seems like there's so many focal points and multiple points of just this powder keg that many are talking about, where it's just one location after another in the Middle East. There are these resistance forces, there are axis of resistance that are in open revolt to what Israel is doing, and of course what the United States is doing to support Israel. But you have Bolton, Lindsey Graham's of the world, all advocating for a war with Iran. And you have the Biden administration, while claiming not to want a wider war and sending Blinken everywhere around the Middle East to supposedly stop this, everything the United States is doing policy-wise, especially militarily, seems to be on the opposite track. So why then, if the U.S. isn't in a position to fight this war, would they go for it? Is it truly that Israel is that influential over U.S. military policy, or is there something bigger?
It's a combination of the two. I mean, definitely Israel is, I mean, let's just be honest. Israel doesn't make U.S. military policy. I mean, they influence America's policy posture in the Middle East. But the idea that Israel somehow picks up the phone and says, bomb this, bomb that, is absurd in the extreme. The United States makes military policy. And here's the problem. We still believe that we are the power that we were back when the Cold War ended, when the Soviet Union collapsed and we emerged from that decades-long Cold War conflict as the sole remaining superpower on the face of the earth, where American military power meant something because it was unmatched. Nobody could match us. So we could deter people by threatening the use of American military force. Then we had the 2-decade-long global war on terror, where we got trapped in this conflict in the Middle East and in Southwest Asia, low-intensity conflict that dominated every aspect of our military, from recruiting to the equipment that we were purchasing to our training. Our entire focus was on Iraq, on Afghanistan, on countering Al-Qaeda. We forgot the basics. We stopped doing large-scale ground combat. We stopped training for it. And we forgot how to fight a real war. We stopped funding it. We stopped preparing for it. Meanwhile, the world is still spinning around, doing what it does. The world's watching the United States, observing what we're doing, how we operate. We were trapped with legacy mindsets. And what I mean by that is, World War II era type thinking, carrier battle groups. Yay, we got an aircraft carrier. It costs us billions of dollars. We put airplanes on it and we sail it to the coast of some country and the airplanes take off and we bomb the crap out of them. Except people now look at it and say, well, what if we build some missiles that can sink that aircraft carrier before those airplanes come in range of our shore? And they've been doing it, area denial weapons. The aircraft carrier is outdated right now. We are in danger of losing the Dwight D. Eisenhower or the Carl Vinson if we dare sail that into the region, because the Iranians will sink it. They will absolutely sink an aircraft carrier. This is the reality. We can't deter people as long as the threat remains sort of mysterious, we don't know what America can do. We're we're a little afraid of what America can do. So we're not going to do anything to get the American beast unhappy with us. But today, everybody's like, well, we know exactly what America can do. They fire some cruise missiles, they drop some bombs, and that's it. That's it. We can't do anything. We can nuke them, but we're not going to do that. So, the Iranians are like, guys, we'll shut down the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, the Houthi have shut down the Red Sea, the Bab el Mandeb. I finally said it right. And they've shut it down. Israel, the port of Eilat has no ships in it. The Suez Canal has a precipitous drop in usage. Europe is suffering because of the billions of dollars it's costing to divert shipping around the Horn of Africa because they can't go through the Suez Canal because they can't go. And that's the Houthi that are doing it with relatively primitive weapons. The Iranians will shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Europe will become strangled. America will become strangled. Our economies will collapse. And if they push it too far, then the Iranians will just shut down oil production throughout the Middle East. And there's not a damn thing we can do to stop it. And all those fancy aircraft we have, I mean, they don't just appear out of anywhere, Danny. It's not like, it's not a computer game where they go, oh, tap, 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 F-22s magically appear over Iraq and drop bombs, tap, 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 ooh, and then nothing. No, they take off from a base. That base is Al Ubaid base in Qatar. It's right there. You know where it is? Right smack in the middle of the Persian Gulf. And you know who has missiles that can blow the living crap out of it anytime they want? The Iranians. And you know who doesn't have enough air defense to protect it? The Americans. We'll lose that base. So all the planes that we think we're going to be using to carry out this fancy air campaign against Iran will be destroyed. Nobody's thinking. There's no one home in the White House. We don't have the military capacity to deter squat. And if we think we want to stand up fight with the Iranians who have spent the last 30 years watching us operate in Afghanistan, in the Middle East, let me give you just a pro hint. Oh, they have a park called Heroes Park where Stepan Bandera's statue and other statues of these wonderful Ukrainian nationalist murdered Nazi sympathizers are worshipped by a very politically active Ukrainian American community. So yeah, it's something that you pay attention to. I received rudimentary training in counterterrorism and anti-terrorism when I was in the Marine Corps. Some of the skill set was pretty cool. High-speed defensive driving. So if they ever try and ambush me on the road, I think I still got that skill set, so I might be able to get away. Other stuff, I mean, look, if they want to kill you, they're going to kill you. That's just the bottom line. And so, if there's, it is what it is. I'm smart. I take, precautions, but I'm not going to live my life, especially here in the United States, in some sort of paranoid frenzy, worried about what's going to happen. I'm not stupid. I keep my radar up. But then you basically have to just get on with your life. I mean, they want to silence you, and so the best way not to be silenced is don't shut up. I mean, there's a comment in there, for a silenced man, Scott, I can hear you pretty often. Well, that's because you can't silence me. You can deplatform me. I mean, there was a while there, if you watched me on YouTube, you didn't get to watch me on YouTube because YouTube booted me off. They've now allowed me to come back. Other platforms, will, I'm sure at some point in time, be put under pressure to keep voices like myself and others, off. X, former Twitter, is under a lot of pressure. Elon Musk, fortunately, is a free speech proponent, and he's putting his money where his mouth is, and he's fighting for free speech, and I will continue to do so. I believe you are doing so as well. It is what it is. But you just got to be smart. Look, if it gets to the point where the Banderists and the Zionists have to kill people to win a debate, they already lost the debate. So I'll just keep speaking, and I encourage everybody else to keep speaking too. The greatest weapon to be used in an environment where people are trying to limit speech is more free speech. Just keep speaking. Just keep doing what you're doing. and leave it up to the discerning audience to decide whether or not your voice has any weight, has any relevance, has any merit. That's the ultimate arbiter. If you have to go around and shoot people or deplatform people in order to win a debate, then you've, like I said, you've already lost it. So I'll keep doing what I do, and I encourage other people to keep doing what you do. We can disagree. That's great. Again, I'm not trying to deplatform anybody. I'm not trying to silence anybody. All I'm saying is that there's an alternative point of view out there, sometimes multiple points of view, and they should all be heard so that the average listener, whether you're an American citizen or from anywhere in the world, you get empowered by knowledge and information. That's the most important thing. The most dangerous person in the world is that individual who thinks on their own because they have been empowered with knowledge and information, and they're not reliant upon anybody to tell them how to think, what the facts are. And programs like this help promote an alternative point of view. I don't want to call them alternative facts because there's no such thing as an alternative fact. A fact is a fact. But maybe an emphasis on a fact set that is otherwise overlooked. So again, thanks for having me. And yeah, don't worry about my safety. I'm good to go. Now, of course, I'm going to say that, and tomorrow they're going to blow up my car. But whatever.
God, don't say that, Scott. Oh my God. Oh, okay. let's pivot to another question I have. Do you think the information that the IDF, the Israeli government, if we went back a year and a half ago, where Twitter, and I want to zero in just a little bit more on Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, do you think that has helped a lot in debunking what the IDF has to say, and maybe caught their propaganda machine off guard, where now, what used to take 10 to 20 years to prove people like Colin Powell wrong can take the matter of an hour with these internet sleuths out there that go on Twitter and say, nope, gotcha, got you at this 1 minute 47 seconds 0.03. You had a gun here. Well, at 1.04, now we rewound it, we watched it again, and boom, there's two guns, or something like that. I mean, has that changed the landscape?
Look, it has. I mean, we're dealing with an international community that is linked. It's when you do a podcast like this, it's not just an American audience that's watching. There's a European audience, there's a Chinese audience, there's a Russian audience, there's a Middle Eastern audience, and they're all watching. We're all seeing the same thing, real time, live. And when you have millions of eyeballs, critical eyeballs looking at something, they're going to pick it out. It's, a lie works if you're talking to an ignorant audience and they're not empowered to to expose the lie. But the global audience it's virtually impossible to lie to them because they are empowered with so many different perspectives. So it's one thing to speak to a limited audience. There are people. Let's just be honest. If I pulled 1,000 people from my community and put them in an auditorium and tried to tap into their collected knowledge of the Middle East, it might be a very limited limited amount of knowledge. And so they're easily, they're susceptible to being misled by data because they're not in a position to question the data. If you get somebody who dresses up nicely, speaks properly, and in America, the best thing to do is get somebody with a British accent because they automatically sound intelligent, and you have them speak to them in a calm way, they're going to go, oh, this is good. But you have that same person broadcast this on the internet, and you're going to have people going, that's not right. That's a lie. Now, you also have people calling out a lie when it's not, because there's the opposite. The danger of the internet is there's no filter. And, so we have a lot of people who are doing good stuff on the internet, but we have a lot of people who aren't doing good stuff, meaning that they're deliberately trying to, promote lies by, muddying the water, etc. This is where, again, we have to respect the viewer, the customer, the audience on the internet, to be discerning. But we also have to be tolerant of the fact that because we're operating as this wild, wild west of information, that it's going to be rough. It's going to get sloppy. It's not going to be as polished as, CNN or MSNBC or BBC. It's going to be what it is. But I think it's beautiful. I think what we're seeing here is the empowerment of a global population. And look, what's the first thing that happens when people don't want their audience to think, or their constituencies? They shut down the internet. Shut down the internet, because by doing so, you immediately stop the ability of information to be flowing freely. And sometimes, believe me, there's times when I'm like, man, I just wish they'd shut that channel down. But then I'm thinking there's people who I think the same thing about the things that I say. And again, the best antidote to bad speech is more free speech, is more speech, more speech, more speech. Get as many different points of view out there. No censorship. And it's taken everybody by surprise, especially Israel. Israel is a nation that is accustomed to controlling the media in the United States and in Europe, to control the narrative. They're accustomed to the default mode being support Israel at all costs, automatically condemn those who are opposed to Israel. That's been the default mode for the longest time. And they have, the two big cards they play. You're an anti-Semite. That's the biggest one. The second you're critical of Israel, it's anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism. They play that card. And then the other one, of course, is the Holocaust, the Holocaust, the Holocaust, the sympathy card. The Holocaust did this, that, the other thing, my relatives, this, that, and the other thing. Therefore, you should never question what I'm doing today, because by questioning me, you're somehow shaming the memory of the Holocaust. And they've played those two cards over and over and over again. But right now, what's happening is I think people are recognizing that, first of all, being anti-Zionist doesn't mean you're anti-Jewish at all. And so the notion that anti-Zionism automatically equates to anti-Semitism, it's being pushed back. There's being pushed back by people like me who are saying, no. I'm not anti-Israel. I'm not anti-Jewish. I'm actually pro-Israel, and I'll defend a Jewish population as much as I'll defend any population. I'm an American, free religion, baby. You come to this country, you should be allowed to practice religion, do whatever you want, free of outside. And if there's people out there saying we're going to take down that synagogue or we're going to do that, no, you won't. I'll be one of the first people standing out there defending a synagogue, defending a Jewish cultural center with my life if necessary, because they're Americans and they deserve that protection. But that's not Zionism. That's Jewish faith, Jewish religion, Jewish culture. Zionism is something completely different. Zionism, especially political Zionism, is about using the Jewish faith in a way to elevate Israel, this Zionist Israel, this biblical Israel, this Eretz Israel, into an modern day version of the Aryan nation of Adolf Hitler. They're talking about, we are the supreme people. We are the chosen people. I always like that one. God chose us. Didn't choose me. Didn't choose you. Didn't choose China. Didn't choose Africa. You're telling me God is very selective in who he chooses. So God made man in his own image, but he doesn't like 99.99999% of us, only the Jews. Only God loves the Jews. No, that's stupid. Again, if you're Jewish and you believe, that's okay. I call stupid a lot of evangelical Christians I call stupid too. A lot of fanatical Muslims I'll call stupid. I'm an equal opportunity insult artist when it comes to that. But the point is, if you're saying that Israel is superior to anything in the Holy Land, that there can be nothing else in the Holy Land but Israel. And it's not just Israel's 67 borders. They're talking, when you look at the map that these political Zionists put out, they're taking over Syria, Lebanon, moving into Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Egypt. They're talking about taking over the whole thing. And these guys are in power. It's not like these are a bunch of fanatics, hanging out in their mother's basement, typing on the computer all day long. These are guys who are actually ministers in the Israeli government as we speak, articulating policies based upon this premise. That can't be supported. But we're not allowed to condemn that today. We're not allowed to question that because we're automatically called anti-Semite at that point in time. It's like the phrase, God bless the United States of America. You're 100% correct. Again, my wife tells me do not read the comments, but every once in a while I see one that has to be. You're 100% correct, the person who wrote that. Look, I love America. I love America, and I love my country. But when I hear an American politician say, "God bless America," I mean, that's not bad. I don't mind that. Please, God bless us. We need all the blessing we can get. Reach down and touch us. Make it all go away. Make us good again. You know, please, please, please. But the way it's done is based on, it's used to promote the notion of, you know, American exceptionalism, meaning God bless America, but God damn the rest of the world. Meaning all you don't count. Only America. Only America counts. Only America has been touched by his Lord. And that's absurd. That's absurd. Even if you don't believe in monotheism, if you don't believe in, you know, the God of Christianity, the God of Judaism, the God of Islam, which a lot of people don't, it doesn't matter. We're all equal. We're all humans. We are all the same. It doesn't matter what color you are, what language you speak, whatever. No life is worth more than another. And one of the problems with both the American, you know, God bless America stance and the Israel, we are the chosen people stance is it implies that there are people who are more important than other people, people whose lives matter more than other people. Anytime you hear the Israelis talk about, you know, for every, you know, Israeli killed, we're going to kill 100 Palestinians. Well, you know who did that? The Nazis. For every German soldier who was killed, we're going to hang 100 people. We're going to shoot 100 people. We're going to burn that village. We're going to do. I mean, Israel has become that which was trying to destroy it. That's one of the things here. So getting back to your question, I think we're going to see a lot of desperate acts by a lot of desperate people trying to silence voices that for the first time in a long time are starting to resonate. I mean, there are people now who aren't afraid. That's the other thing is people become fearless because it's hard to shut them down. People can now get out there and call out Zionism as the political scourge that it is. And yes, they'll be attacked, but they'll also find a lot of support. And there's people saying, see, the internet has built up this whole anti-Semitic thing. Yes, it has. Yes, it has. There's a whole bunch of communities out there on the internet. There are communities of hate. There are communities of intolerance. There are communities of whatever you want to say it. That's the consequence of free speech, ladies and gentlemen. Free speech means everybody gets to speak. The difference here is that I don't have to embrace that which is put out there. There's the people watching right now, you know, if you don't like what we're saying, Alex, I don't mean to do this to your show, but if you don't like what we're saying, click. Turn it off. Stop watching. You don't have to watch. No one's paying you to watch. You don't have to watch. If you don't like it, get the hell out of here. Alex cares because it's and I care about but the bottom line is I don't care. If you don't like what you're hearing, go find something that you do like. But see, the beauty of it is where there is quality, people tend to gather around, and good ideas beget good listeners and good participants and good audiences. And this is a good audience because you have good guests and you talk about things like that. You can't shut Twitter down because there are voices on Twitter that you disagree with. What you need to do is say, thank God, not only that they get to speak, but I get to speak and to counter them. Because if you're saying you need to shut them down, what you're saying is your voice isn't strong enough to compete against them. I'd like to believe that my voice can compete against any pro-Zionist voice out there. I have an open challenge to anybody that's taken a different point of view on the issue of Israel to debate anytime, any place. You name it, we got it, buddy. But they won't. Piers Morgan, you know, he's out there attacking people. He basically, you know, bans people, blocks them, doesn't want to have that discussion.
Yeah, he has a fallback answer or the fallback comment all the time. Israel has its right to defend itself. But here's something I want to ask you, Scott, because I get this from a lot of people watching the show. They say, you know, we were at a bar, we were at a restaurant, we were at our uncle's house for the weekend, and somebody brought up the Israel-Palestine, and they're saying, like, is there a way that we can try to engage? And most of it is, I would say, a lot of the people say, well, you know, the Piers Morgan line, well, Israel has its right to defend itself. I think the average person watching this program has probably either been involved in a conversation like that, or has been pulled into a conversation like that, and sometimes maybe a bit afraid to answer back, is there a go-to? I don't know. I mean, you are a person that I would love to have beside me when I'm sitting in these situations where people just come right at me. And
yeah, I'll tell you what I would do in a bar. Come at me at a bar. Israel has the right to exist. I go up to him and I say, "Give me your keys to your car. Give me your keys, or I'm going to break your damn neck. Give me the keys to your car, and I'm taking your car, and I'm going to your house, and don't you dare show up." And then when you come up and say, "I want my house," I'm going to say, "What? You think you have a right to defend yourself?" I mean, I'm going to kill you because I have a right to defend myself. And you're going to say, "But you have no right. You stole my house." I have a right to. I have an inherent right to defend myself. I stole your house. And now you want to come and get it back? I'm going to kill you. But you can't do that. It's my house. I have an inherent right of defense. Welcome to the Israeli argument. They stole the Palestinian land. They stole everything. And then they say, when you dare come back and say, "I want it back," or "I want to challenge you," you can't. I have a right to defend myself. And I have Big Brother America that's giving me the airplanes, the bombs, and everything to do it, because we guarantee that Israel has the technological supremacy over any potential enemy. The occupier never has an inherent right of self-defense against the occupied. That is international law. That is what the International Court of Justice decided in 2004 about this very issue. So that's what I would just tell people, that Israel's the occupier, and they have no inherent right of self-defense against anything the occupied do in relation to the actions of the occupier. And then, they can, then I'll just give me your damn house. And don't come near me, because I have an inherent right of self-defense, and I'll kill you the moment you step across the threshold. No, well, you can't do it. You just said Israel could. Why can't I? Why can't I steal your house and say, "Get the hell out of here"? You just told me Israel has an inherent right of self-defense. They don't. See, if I steal your house and I'm in your house, you have every right to come in and kill me because I stole your house. You're in the right, I'm in the wrong. Israel's in the wrong here, especially Eretz Israel, this political Zionist, infused Israel. I would say this, that the Israel defined by the 48 borders and the 67 borders has a right to exist. And if you're attacking the Israel of 48 and 67, then Israel has an inherent right of self-defense. But what Israel's doing to Gaza right now is not, everybody's like, they got out in 2005. There's a thing called CLA and COGAT. And I just asked people to go and Google it. The Israelis give you a nice, convenient website that explains what it is. The Civilian Liaison Agency, and COGAT is the military arm. They manage everything that happens inside Gaza. Don't tell me that Israel is outside of Gaza. Nothing happens in Gaza unless Israel says it happens. Unless Israel approves it. Nothing goes into Gaza unless Israel says it's approved. If Israel had nothing to do with Gaza, why can't Gaza have a port? Why won't Israel allow shipping in and out of Gaza? Because they can't allow the Palestinians to be in control of their lives. Why don't they have an airport? Why can't Palestinians get a Palestinian passport, go to the Palestinian airport, and fly around the world like we all do? They can't. Why? Israel says they can't.
Scott, let's talk about that.
Gaza. Israel occupies Gaza. Israel controls every aspect of Gaza.
Let's talk about that, because I think the average person doesn't really understand, still to this day, what this occupation means. Let's talk about, if you're a Palestinian today, what are your chances of going to an airport, going for a walk on the beach, leaving, coming back, communicating with loved ones around the world? Internet, no internet. I mean, what rights do they have, if any, Palestinians? And really, the future, they've wiped out, 4,000 or 5,000 children. I mean, isn't this a recipe for an underground movement to say, wait a minute, this is a whole young generation coming up. They've been battered and beaten down, and brothers and sisters have been killed. I mean, Israel really thinks that they're going to get the message through. I mean, isn't this a recipe for disaster?
Well, it is a recipe for disaster. Let's just put it this way. If you're a Palestinian, you have no rights. None. Zero. Now, I know there's going to be lawyers out there say they have an inherent right of being treated like human beings under the... No, they don't. And the proof is what's happening right now. 12,000 have been murdered. Where are their rights? Where are their rights? They don't have any rights. Nobody's going to go to jail for murdering them. 12,000 murders, 4,000 dead children. All those people out there, we care about the kids. We care. You don't give a damn about the kids. If you did, you'd be up in arms, fuming at the mouth, storming the gates. No, you're like, oh, we're hard. They have no rights. None. Zero. No one's doing anything. Now, there's people in the streets, and God bless those people. Please continue to do that. But we all know what happens eventually. The demonstrations, they can't go out there forever because they got to go to work. They got to earn a paycheck. They got to go home. They got to feed the kids. They got to do this. They got to do that. And eventually the demonstrations peter out. The nations that could do something aren't doing anything. This is why, again, China, step up to the plate. Do something. Be the leader you claim you want to be. It's China's time to shine. It's China now that can take the lead in solving this problem, because America isn't going to. America can't. We've been discredited. We're not impartial. It's time for China to shine. But, you know, the way you shine is that you have to pick a good versus evil. And I think it's time now that we recognize that Israel is on the side of evil right now. China needs to side with the Palestinians in a fair way. But I mean, this is, we're at a state right now where if you want to say the Palestinians have rights, then you have to stand up and defend those rights. You have to defend them. There's a whole bunch of French lawyers that have come out and said, we're going to defend you. Well, then do it. I'm glad you came out and said you're going to do it. The proof is in the pudding. I want to see case after case after case after case filed in the International Criminal Court. I want every single Israeli pilot to be indicted. I want every Israeli soldier, every Israeli politician. If you hold an Israeli passport, you need to be indicted for the crime of mass murder, collective punishment. You're all guilty of it. Because you allow it to happen. This, maybe the Israeli passport thing was a little bit too much, but you know, but my point is, you have to start standing up and defending Palestinians if they're to have any rights. Because if no one's going to stand up and defend them, then they have no rights. You say, I mean, you talk about walking the beach. Really? You know, there's cases where boys went to play on the beach, as boys are wont to do, and the Israeli Navy killed them. Who stood up for their rights? There's a case where, you know, mothers are with their children in their home trying to, you know, prepare the afternoon meal. Bam, bomb got them. Who stood up for their rights? Don't tell me that the Palestinians have rights. They don't. They have no rights. They don't have the right to live. They don't have the right to breathe. They don't have a right to eat. They don't have a right to travel. They have no rights. They're not even people. They're just statistics. And the proof, again, is in the numbers. Because one should be too many. One should be too many. But 12,000 weren't just like, because here's the funny thing. Talk to the Americans. I mean, I always love this one when a stupid American diplomat gets out there. 12,000's too many. Well, what's an acceptable number, boy? You know 12,000's too many. 8,000, that a good number for you? So if you're the Palestinian and you got in the lottery and you pulled number 7,999, you don't count. But if you got lottery number 8,001, your life matters now, because 8,000 is too many. I mean, it's just the dumbest thing in the world for anybody to ever say that 12,000 is too many. One is too many.
Scott, how does China get involved?
Well, how did China get involved with Saudi Arabia and Iran? China is a global power. China has global interests. China's interests seem to be grounded more in stability than trying to impose Chinese will. I mean, the funny thing is, China brokered this deal between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And how many Chinese troops then moved into the Middle East to take over that base that Iran promised them in exchange for this? Or how many Chinese airplanes flew to Saudi Arabia? None. That's my point. China didn't do this to get into the Middle East and take over the Middle East. China did it because they need Iran and Saudi Arabia to trade with them via BRICS, via the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They need that to get the Chinese, economy, the Belts and Roads Initiative and the new Silk Highway to connect with the Middle East, to do this thing that China is really good at, which is promoting global trade and commerce. That's where they need stability, long-term stability, not short-term gain, long-term stability. So China is the only nation that is looking for, if, for instance, if they were to get involved in a solution, and they've been saying they're prepared to do this. It's not like I'm asking China to do something never. China's been saying for years, we're ready to take the lead on resolving this issue. But their solution isn't going to be in America. See, America can't give you a solution because we're dealing with a Congress that's bought and paid for by Israel. The last time I checked, Israel doesn't own the Chinese government yet. You know, who knows? Down the road, it may happen. But in the United States, our government is bought and paid for by Israel. They own it. So everything we do is going to be a short-term focus for the short-term benefit of Israel. We're not looking for any long-term solutions. This is why whenever America is involved in a two-state solution discussion, it immediately disappears, because we have to be responsive now to the immediate political needs of an Israeli political class that survives because of America. And so if we're doing something that makes it uncomfortable for them, we have to immediately correct the course in short-term. China is long-term. China's about economic. Here's the other thing too. Take a look at Gaza. Who's going to rebuild it? Who has the resources to rebuild it? Who has the ability to leverage their global economic clout into rebuilding? The United States can't. Again, we got money, but hell, the only way we could rebuild Gaza is if we sold more bonds to China to raise the money to rebuild Gaza. I mean, that's the ridiculous state of the American economy today. China, on the other hand, again, the Chinese government has to decide what's in its best interest. But one of the things that China can offer, and again, look at how excited Benjamin Netanyahu got about at the General Assembly debate when he was showing the map, not of the Iranian bomb as he used to do, but of the map showing the Middle East, India economic corridor, the India Middle East economic corridor that came up through Haifa connectivity. And he's like, oh, Israel's going to be. China can offer that to Israel. China's the only one that can offer that to Israel. China can offer that to Israel. China can offer to rebuild Gaza. China can be the voice of sanity and stability that's premised on the economic well-being of all parties in play. China doesn't care what your domestic politics are. That's the difference between China and America. We come in and tell you how to wipe your nose. China comes in and just says, peace, harmony, what you do inside your borders, your business. But what we need you to do is live in peace and harmony with your neighbors and promote this economic machine to keep this thing going for all parties, for everybody to succeed. It's a different approach in America, which is purely a selfish, security-oriented approach. What's in it for us? What do we get out of this? How do we enhance our military posture in the region with a treaty, with this, with that, and the other thing? I think the Chinese approach is much needed right now. So China brings in a fresh approach with the ability to back up policy objectives with resources, should China decide that that's where the resources go. And I think the Chinese probably would say, if you could get a long-term peace between Palestinians and Israelis, and then Israelis and the Arabs, that might be worth the investment. So we'll see. But I think China brings a whole fresh approach, a truly impartial approach, and one that's much needed, and one that, frankly speaking, isn't owned by Israel, and which will do more than just pay lip service to the Palestinians. Because the Palestinians, everybody talks about Palestine, but they don't mean it. Nobody means it. Nobody supports the Palestinians. Nobody ever has. Maybe China can be that nation that actually steps up and says, when we are out here advocating for Palestine, understand that we are advocating for Palestine and we mean it. That would be nice.
Scott, I mean, there's been some talk about this natural gas find off the shores of Gaza. It's quite a big project. It was brought up in the news years ago. And now, again, it's starting to come back into the headlines. Gaza's multi-billion-dollar gas field. I don't know if you know much about it or heard much about it, but this could possibly be a Chinese angle, if anything, if you know what I mean. Like,
well, it could be. I mean, there's a giant gas field off the coast, in the Eastern Mediterranean. And it's being divvied up by Egypt, by Cyprus. Turkey's trying to impose its will on that. But in the immediate thing, when you talk about Israel, Israel is is competing against two of their neighbors. One is Gaza, which has, if it was a sovereign state, a economic zone that it gets to develop. And it's, you draw a line from the border out in the sea, it goes out to a certain distance, and that's their zone, economic exclusivity zone. Israel does the same thing. Israel almost got in a war with Hezbollah because Israel has drawn a line that sort of jotted up to take over part of the Lebanese claim, and Hezbollah went, we exist only to prevent you from stealing Lebanese land, so you're going to have to readjust that line. And guess what Israel did? They readjusted the line. But there's all that gas. It needs to be developed and exploited. One thing that no one's going to do is spend hundreds of billions of dollars to develop this if their investment has a chance of going up literally in flames through a regional war. So China can talk about the kind of stability, and you attach money to it, gas development, etc. People start paying attention, and then B, it's in China's interest, because if you develop it, maybe you want to bring in some Chinese gas developers, and China can, has an economic, every nation has a right to pursue its own thing. Who knows? But China, I think that is a player. But right now for the Palestinians, it's just it's a faint dream, because Israel will never let it happen, because there is no Gaza, there is no West Bank, there is no Palestine, there's only Israel. So we need to change that reality. We need to make a Palestine that can advocate for its own economic interests and negotiate with whomever they want to negotiate to develop its resources, and China could be a player in that.
I really think that China is actually one of the only players that can rebuild an infrastructure on nations that have been torn apart. I mean, let's pivot over to Ukraine right now. I've asked this question a few times, and you've answered it in detail on the show many times. Is that land that people have been fighting over, where everyone's at a standstill on the Russian side and the Ukraine side, and bombs going back and forth? I mean, it's torched land, it's mined land. I mean, is China one of the only nations that can rebuild something like this? Because we are talking, huge amounts of land. I mean, I saw an interview the other day where they were in the old steel factory, walking through there and seeing that just completely bombed out. And the guys that were walking through, Lancaster and another guy running a channel there, said, this could be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. I mean, it's just in a plant to rebuild it. So is China, and I think you're onto something here, is China one of the only nations that can really rebuild these nations that have been absolutely flattened by war?
Well, let's be clear that Russia will rebuild Russia. And they're not, I mean, I can't speak for the Russian government, but I take a look at what they've talked about, the priorities set forth by President Putin regarding the 4 new territories and Crimea. And he said that, rebuilding the economic and social infrastructure of these places, bringing it up to Russian standards, is the top priority of his government. Now, if this conflict continues to a point where Russia assumes control over, some Russian leaders, Medvedev and others have insinuated that, Russia will probably take 5 more oblasts, 5 more territories. That's almost half of Ukraine. But Russia will assume responsibility for that. I think where China comes in is, in addition to being a economic partner with Russia, because by being a good partner with Russia, you empower the Russian economy to the point where it can feasibly divert billions of dollars worth of resources to rebuild these new territories. But Russia's not going to rebuild Ukraine per se. At least it won't be their top priority. And the West is abandoning Ukraine like a bad habit. Plus, Ukraine, I believe, whatever exists, will be under a period of Russian domination where denazification is a reality, and the West isn't going to invest into that. China might. China, might be willing to go in and and extend the Belts and Roads Initiative into Ukraine, and I think Russia might be inclined to let them happen, because the last thing Russia needs is a Ukrainian cancer festering on its borders. When this war ends, Ukraine needs to be brought back into being a functional, nation based upon logic, and China could be of assistance there, I believe. Again, I can't speak on behalf of Chinese politicians and what their priorities are, but again, I think they also agree that Ukraine can't be this infected mass just putrefying on the flank of Russia, that Ukraine will have to be healed. And China could play a role in that if China wanted to. As I said, I think Ukraine is going to be abandoned by the West, and it's not going to be Russia's top priority. Russia's top priority is Russia. But I don't think Russia would impede a nation like China, a friendly nation, coming in and helping rebuild Ukraine, so that as Russia rebuilds, Ukraine rebuilds, and at some point in time, you'll have two healthy nations that will have to figure out how to live in peace and harmony with each other.
I have a comment up on the screen here. U.S. wins in Argentina, the recent elections. Have you got any comments on that?
Well, it's definitely goes against the trend of what was happening. You saw, what I'm interested in is what's Argentina's status with BRICS going forward, because you know, they were one of the nations that signed on to join BRICS, and they're supposed to be brought in early next year. But a key aspect of BRICS is de-dollarization, and the new Argentinian president said no, he wants to re-dollarize the Argentine economy, and he's going down, you know, a path that runs counter to all of his neighbors and all of the global South. So, you know, he will definitely be an outlier. Argentina will be an outlier, and now the question is America the economic ally that Argentina can rely upon? And all I would caution the Argentinians is that you're not the 51st state. You can wave the American flag as much as you want to. You can say all nice things about America all you want. Thank you very much. But you're not the 51st state, and you are so low on our list of priorities, it's not even funny. We got a whole bunch of things we got to do here at home. They're fighting over money for Ukraine and Israel. And I don't know what you think America is going to do, because the one thing we will do is punch you over to the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. And history shows that once they get their grips on an economy like Argentina, the conditions that they put on this money are very strict.